Welcome to Shaddoom. This is the second part of our tribute to Time Warp and Wayne Winsett, without whom we would not be here. Hit it, Scorpio.
Wayne, over the years at Time Warp, you've had a lot of signings with numerous creators, and of all of them, who are your favorites?
Well, I don't know if I can count Stan and Jack because they were still with Mile High, but the two biggest ones that will always stand out in my mind are Neil Gaiman and the reign of the Superman tour when I don't even remember how many people there, like 10 creators. Gil Kane and Curt Swan and Julie Schwartz was there. John Bogdanova was there, I think.
Right.
Mike Carlin, who was the editor. I just remember there were so many great people. That was incredible. And it wasn't just my store. Mile High had done a whole bunch of all of the stores, basically. These guys went to all of them. But I was the last one of the night. And then we went out to the dinner. Where did we go? The Harvest or something?
Yeah,
like
exactly. That's the only time I've been there.
Oh, huh. Yeah, and that was a lot of fun too. But yeah, that was quite a crazy time too, just because of how many people we had there. And I always idolized Curt Swan. He was the one person that was there that I was really into the most because I loved his Superman stories. Fantastic stuff. And I never appreciated somebody like Gil Kane, for instance. He always kind of bugged me, and he'd had a reputation that preceded him there also, and I kind of didn't connect with him too much. But Curt Swan, I was kind of gushing over for sure the whole night.
I was excited to meet all the old timers, but Gil Kane's the one I wanted my photo taken with. So I guess that's Murphy Anderson in the picture too.
You do a pretty good Gil Kane imitation. Wayne, Curt Swan did, as a person, did you feel like he had the same energy that his work has, that kind of, wholesome, straightforward, positive? Did that energy carry into his, personality as far as you could see?
Well, he was getting up there in years at that point, and he was kind of shy, not really that outgoing. A lot of the artists, I don't think they realized just what kind of impact they left on the world, And I think he was one of those types of people that had such a huge body of work, but maybe didn't realize how great he was, He also did a lot of the Legion of Superheroes that I idolized growing up too. So it was special to have him there for sure. But we weren't able to spend a lot of time with individual people that much because there were so many of them. You talk to one guy for 2 minutes and another guy for a couple minutes, and it was hard to get around to talking to everybody. That was incredible. We had Neil Gaiman twice, and the first time we had Neil Gaiman was definitely the highlight of all the signings I've ever had. Because we had a crowd going around the block. Sandman was incredibly popular. A wide variety of types of people back then.
I've been reading Sandman for a long time. I just came out here because I'm really excited to meet him.
But the highlight was definitely Neil Gaiman. And we had such a great crowd. Everybody had such a good time.
Well, as you can tell, Wayne is very, very excited.
I'm actually nice and relaxed right now. Everything's under control, and I think we've got it totally set. No problems, no worries right now. Very happy.
We went to a really fun restaurant afterwards called the TOMPKINS for dinner. It was just a magical night, to tell you the truth. So that's the highlight of all the signings.
You had a special bookplate made for the hardcover of Season of Mists, which is what the tour was promoting. And it was limited to 150 copies. I numbered them all. Omar, former Trimorp employee, we were out in the parking lot with our cans of spray mount, spraying the back of them and putting them in the books. But did any other stores on the Season of Mist tour do that?
No, nobody else did that but us, actually. And that was, our good friend Omar Richmond that helped you. He was a great guy, for sure. Mine's crooked, by the way. Can you fix it for me? Just kidding. Neil was very, very impressed, for sure. He was, because nobody else had done it on the tour yet. And he was a big fan of it, for sure.
Yeah, it was a cool thing to do, and you still see them pop up every once in a while on eBay or Worth Point.
Yeah, they're selling them. How could they do that?
People need money sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And did you have to get that okay by DC to do it?
I did not. Nope. I knew Karen Berger from who was the editor of Vertigo back then. And she's the one that suggested that Neil come to my store, which was a very special thing for her to do, for sure.
Yeah.
She's a great person, and it was one of those unique opportunities that came along. She said, "Go with whatever you want to, go with your gut." So I did.
Yeah. Side note: Vertigo would have just been. It was in the planning stages at that point. It wasn't until like 6 or 7 months later that it became an official brand or sub-brand, a label within DC.
Yeah, I miss Vertigo. So that was some of the best comics that have ever been printed, really. I just, I miss the whole imprint. I really do. Preacher, Scalped. I mean, you can go on and on and on. How much great.
They were just taking chances then.
Yeah.
And you had a working relationship of some kind with DC at the time, right? Like an advertising thing?
Well, yeah, there was a really special group called the RRP, which stood for Retail Representative Program. And I was lucky to be the only one from Colorado that was in that group. And DC really wined us and dined us really, really well. They would fly us out to different cities like Burbank and just pick our brains on what we wanted. And they listened. That's the one thing I probably miss nowadays is the publishers caring what the retailers thought. That does not exist in any way, shape, or form with Marvel or DC anymore. The smaller companies still do it to a certain extent, but Marvel's always been pretty weird about it. But DC, they were the best. And there was, a nice group of us that had a wide range of types of stores, big stores, little stores, and they listened. We got lots of things done that we saw materialize in the comics. So that was one of the greatest honors of my life, really, was being associated with that group.
Is that how you got the Neil Gaiman Sandman tour?
Yes.
Both of
them?
I
became good friends with Karen Berger, who was the editor for the Vertigo line. And we became really close. And she was the one that suggested that Neil come to Boulder for the signing, and I was definitely excited about it for sure. I was a big Sandman fan. The next signing that I did, we did have Dave McKean too, and that was really cool. I'd moved to a smaller store, had him the second time, and it did not go over quite as well as the first time because it was such a smaller store that I had, and it was raining, and a lot of people had to wait in a cold rain. We were buying them hot chocolate and stuff like that, but Neil wasn't very happy after that one with me or the store. He thought he was coming to the same big store again where we had lots of room and could fit everybody in the store. That wasn't the case with the second signing. So
Yeah, I was there for both of them, but I didn't realize he was disgruntled at all about the second one.
yeah, at the end of the signing, I'd had a giant inflatable Spider-Man that I thought I would inflate with helium and it would float over top of the store. Well, the helium balloon was just too heavy and it didn't inflate and hang over the store. So at the end, we all thought we'd take a few hits off of the helium and talk really funny.
And I'm going to be high.
Terrors are real. Nightmares are real.
Well, Dave McKean had flown over, and he was not, the day before, was not used to altitude. He took a suck on that stem on the Spider-Man. And he passed out. And
Wow.
we barely caught him before he almost hit the floor. So I actually had taped that, and I have it on a VHS tape somewhere, but I don't know where it is. And a few years ago, I was out in San Diego, and I saw Dave, and I said, "Do you remember that story?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I'm going to put that video on the internet." He said, "Don't you dare."
I really don't want to say that they shouldn't do that. Of course they should.
So he was.
We
too
want to
happy.
ask you for it, then.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's,
I've been waiting to see that for decades.
Yeah, I'll never find it. You're just going to keep on waiting. I think I have most of my VHS tapes somewhere in a box in my storage unit, but they're not marked at all.
let it be lost to history.
The world may never know.
Yeah, and you were personally thanked by Neil Gaiman in Sandman number 75.
Yeah, well, a lot of people are. My name just happens to be in there.
Well, you're one of you're one of the few retailers. I think there might have been 8 retailers who were thanked, but just you're thanked by him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Other creators who thanked you in their comic were the Hernandez brothers for the Time Warp signing in 1992.
Yeah, that was their 10th anniversary tour, and that one was definitely a lot of fun too. It's funny nowadays, we hardly ever do signings anymore. People seem to be just too busy. They're not really into promoting their work in that way. They want to see a bunch more people at conventions where they know there's going to be tons of fans that are just there to see them. And it's just, it's a different world now than it used to be. And I loved doing the signings. I really did, but it's diminishing returns right now because we usually only get a small handful of people for our signings nowadays. So it's just not the same as it used to be, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we had some great ones back in the day. Very, very fond memories of them, for sure.
The first one I remember after I started working at Time Warp in 1991 was Jim Shooter. When Valiant first published Magnus Robot Fighter and Solar Man of the Atom.
Bob Layton was at that one too, right? Yeah.
Probably. I don't remember him, but probably.
You've had him more than once. I remember
Yeah, I
seeing
had
him
him
when
a
he was
couple
still at
times.
Marvel.
Yeah. And it's ironic because he and I are the same age, and he was writing Legion of Superheroes when I was just,
Wow.
13 years old. He was writing comic books. And I was too starstruck by him to even talk to him both times about how much his Legion of Superhero stories spoke to me, because they really did. Some of his stories in the early Legions that I read, fantastic, and I can read them again with a new eye nowadays and enjoy them just as much as I enjoyed them back then. They still speak to me, and they're still great stories. And I wish I could really sit down with him and tell him how much his stories really mean to me, because I don't think without his influence and a lot of other people back then, I don't think I'd own a comic book store. He changed my life.
Jim Shooter was at the store when he was still at Marvel. That kind of changed my life too, partially because it was amazing meeting him, and but also at that particular signing is where I met George Doro, who was involved with Acme Comics fanzine, and he invited me to one of the meetings, and I started publishing in fanzines as a result of that. So once again, you create a space, and there's so much that goes with that. Just you created a space for people to meet as well as for people to find artwork, and changes lives. I mean, through the store, obviously, I met Scorpio, Mike Minnie, everyone that worked there, and then people that got my career started.
Now we know part of your origin story too.
There you go. Yeah, and yeah, it was really good that you kept that store going. That's great.
Hi, I'm John Murphy. I'm John Murphy. I came to Boulder in 1987, and Wayne at Time Warp was actually one of the very first people I met when I moved here to go to CU Boulder. The first thing I did back there in 1987 was pull out the phone book, Yellow Pages, and find the local comic book shop. The next day I went in there and met Wayne and John Desbin and opened my file, and I still have it to this day. Well, fast forward 4.5, 5 years later, having been a customer and going to CU Boulder, I had graduated, and Wayne got in a situation where his manager was involved in a terrible motorcycle accident and was going to be in the hospital for, I think he was there almost a year, and he needed help. And I had just graduated, so I stepped in and was manager of Time Warp Comics from 1992 to 1993. Had never done retail management before, but loved the shop and loved Wayne and wanted to help any way I could. So I stepped in and figured it out on the fly. Working at Time Warp was really cool because at that time everything was blowing up in the comic book world. They killed Superman, and we had the huge Superman signing. We had a huge signing with Neil Gaiman when Sandman was at its height. I think that's all a testament to the draw that Wayne has as being such a powerhouse in the comics retailing industry for so many decades. Fast forward 5 or 6 years after that, I ended up opening my own comic book shop with Wayne's help as a mentor. And so I had Highlander Comics. That was a direct result of my friendship and Wayne's mentorship. And I did that for a decade, closed that in 2008. And I'm still shopping at Time Warp in Boulder. Wayne is one of my oldest and best friends. And when I say old, he's old.
What's the biggest difference between owning Time Warp now in 2024 than when you started in 1984?
Well, not that many people read comic books back then. I remember statistics that said less than 0.1% of the population was reading comic books back then. Now, I don't know where it is now, but it's a lot more of a phenomenon now. It's more respected more people read comic books now, certainly than did 40 years ago, especially women. You know, I only had like one or two female customers back then. And now there's many times in the store that it'll be just nothing but women in the store. So that's really changed a lot. And, you know, a lot of that is due to the great movies and TV shows that have come out. You know, back when I was a kid, all we had was the Marvel cartoons and you know, Superman with George Reeves and stuff like that. But it never really took off that well. But once it became mainstream, you know, starting with The Dark Knight and Watchmen and all that kind of stuff, it really let people know that comics were a viable, you know, type of reading that people were starting to appreciate finally. And it's just kind of snowballed into where it is today. And you know, I think that we're still living in a golden age right now, and there's still a lot that can happen, a lot of good stuff out there, all types of great books, and people appreciate it now. And you know, there's college courses that use graphic novels as textbooks. I mean, we never saw anything like that when I was going to school. They were frowned upon.
I'm William Cuskin, English professor and comics teacher. I came to Boulder in probably 2006. 2005, that was my interview day. And after my interview in my dress shoes and suit, I walked across town, but it was freezing cold. And I looked up, what was the comic store in Boulder? They gotta have a comic store. It was so cold that they were having rolling blackouts. But I made it. I made it to Time Warp. Again, this was 2005. And since then, I've been coming back to Time Warp because Time Warp is the temple of comics. It's the house of ideas in Boulder. And Wayne is the high priest of Time Warp, right? So Wayne has guided me through comics for the past 18 years, right? He's helped me build a course around comics. He's appeared in the course. He coined the lecture, Comics Economics. He is the high priest of comics, and Time Warp is the temple.
So yeah, a lot has changed in 40 years, for the better, mostly for the better.
What's gone? What's not for the better, would you say?
Well, there's too many titles. For one thing, there's too many choices for people, and the prices. You know, a new comic book nowadays $4.99, where you know that when I started they were 35 cents, and you know that's a big difference. People can't afford as many comics when they come in anymore, and there's so many different kinds of things to you know, distract people. There's digital comics, there's the internet, there's, you know, wide variety of video games. So, you know, there's a lot more competition for people's money nowadays. And people seem to have shorter attention spans too, I think. So I think that plays into a lot of this too. But there's still a lot of great books. There were a lot of great books then, and there's still a lot of great books now. So that's one thing that has stayed the same. But, you know, there's definitely differences for sure. Anything that you can think of, too, that you think is different?
Well, I think there's actually a return to more genres to choose from, like, say they were in the 1950s, before the resurgence, before Marvel really got the whole superhero thing going up again. So, and pretty much anyone can make a comic now. So as far as, like you said, it is a golden age as far as content goes, I think. It's just the mainstream has shifted away from Marvel and DC being the mainstream to, say, Scholastic being the mainstream. Marvel and DC are such a small fraction of the whole comic book market now that it's strange. It's interesting to see what will happen with them, because they affect all the other independent comics that are being made and sold in comic stores. Like, if Marvel and DC stopped publishing, would you still be able to own a comic? Would Time Warp still?
I think so. A lot of stores are not even carrying new comics; they're just carrying back issues now. So I think it could be viable, but you'd have to find the right location where your rent wasn't so high and you could afford to not make as much money. Another thing that kind of sprouted up in the last few years, you mentioned Scholastic, and there's a lot of books like, Bone and Amulet, books that are bestsellers that are in regular bookstores now too. So that's really changed that dynamic also. But a lot of stuff you're talking about stuff in the 50s and 60s, that some of that stuff seems to be gone with the ages, like war books, for instance, and romance comics. They haven't really found a foothold in the present time back like they did back in the day then. But horror comics are bigger than ever right now, which is kind of weird. Of all the surviving genres, horror comics are bigger than they've ever been, really, which says something about society now, I'm sure, but I'm not quite sure what.
You worked here a long time?
Almost 4 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I know, but it's not so bad. I mean, I'm pretty friendly with most of the customers, so I just hang out, bullshit, read comic books.
The general notion of comic store employees is they just sit around and read comic books all day. I've been in stores where that's what was happening, but Time Warp was never like that. It's still never like that. Did you already have a strong work ethic before starting at Mile High?
Yeah, I had a very hard work ethic instilled in me at a very young age. I've always been a hard worker. I'm probably a workaholic if I admit that to myself. I just, that stereotype of the comic book guy in The Simpsons or the weird guy in Big Bang Theory, that perpetuates the stereotype that a lot of people think. I don't think there's enough time in the day to get all the work done that we need to get done. We just don't have time to sit around and read comic books, I know I see it at other comic stores I go to also, but those are not the kind of comic book stores that are going to succeed in life, because they're just treating it more as a hobby and not as a job per se.
Well, also, one of the benefits of going to a local comic store is you get to interact with humans and talk about comics, like a club in a way. And that's one, like if there's going to be a brick and mortar comic store, you need to interact with people, because people can just buy their comics online if they want. So you need to have that extra human service interaction. And I think Time Warp's always had that before and after. I mean, I as a customer before I worked at Time Warp, during when I worked at Time Warp, after all these years later, your employees still have that.
Yeah, well, I don't have time to sit and read, so I'm not going to let anybody else do it either. I'm a slave driver.
What have we here?
Where's my whip?
That's good. Good.
Hi, I'm Kyle Winsett, Wayne's son. I've had the fortunate luck to grow up with a father owning a comic book store my whole life. And, honestly, I took it for granted until I got a little bit older. And I'll never forget the comic series that kind of pulled me back into the scene. It was Marvel Zombies a long time ago, right? When I was finishing up high school, I remember, like, wait a minute, comics aren't just the same old, like, superhero stop the bad guys. And ever since then, I've just been reading fun comic books, whether it be like the normal superhero stuff or the wild independent stuff, and yeah, it's so lucky. One thing I'll never forget is going to Free Comic Book Day and wearing a terribly fit Batman costume, and Courtney, my partner, was dressed up as Catwoman, and we had the Batmobile this year. And a kid came up to me with her mom and said, "Oh, I said, look, Mom, I told you Batman was real."
When you were in the Air Force, you said that when you went to high school, your parents basically discouraged you or forbade you from continuing to buy comic books, but then it sounds like you were still reading comic books by the time you went to college. In those years that you were in the Air Force, did you have access to comic books just on base or from when you went out into, a store and got them on spinner racks? Did you basically resume buying comics while you were in the military?
Yeah, I'll backtrack just a second. I wasn't allowed to buy new comic books, but I did it anyway. I hope my mom never sees this. I would say I was going to a friend's house and I'd ride my bike to that one store and I'd buy them, and then I'd have to hide them under my shirt. Or
Yep.
I remember I had hogs that I was raising, and I dug a hole under the pig pen and hid some of my comics in a box under the pig pen. But when I went into the service, I finally had a car, so I could drive around to the different places and make sure if I couldn't find the issue that I needed at one place, I would drive around San Antonio until I found a place that did have the comic I was looking for. So I was still addicted to them. I still loved them just as much, if not more, when I went into the service.
So you never had that classic stopped buying comics because you discovered girls?
No.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, no, that never even occurred to me.
Probably says something about both of us.
Yeah, we're dweebs. I don't know.
What about you, Stefano?
We're lifers, I never really stopped reading comic books. I started really slowing down after having children and not working in a comic book store. Even if I was working in comics, I was so busy that I just stopped keeping up. And then, around the time that I was able to look up, I shared a studio with a bunch of other artists in Seattle around the time that I was working for Valiant and The Walking Dead. And I was exposed to more comic books through them than I was able to get to on my own, because there wasn't a comic book store anywhere near me. A lot of the stores in the area closed down in the 2000s, 2010s. And then, I pretty much stopped working in comic books for a variety of reasons over the last few years. There's no comic stores. And when I look up, I can barely recognize the landscape. So Wayne mentioned Amulet. Amulet was on my radar partially because I'd met the creator. He used to live in the same town that I lived in outside Seattle for a while. But also independently of that, my kids and my friends' kids who are now in their late teens, early 20s, read Amulet, and we'll talk about it. So that one's been on my radar. And my kids also read Renate Elgemeyer's work. So I was aware that there's this whole different sort of comics that's out there. But when I look at the comic books that we all grew up reading, being, fans of superhero books and DC and Marvel, and later Image, and Dark Horse, and all of the other independent companies that didn't last. That world, the world of superheroes, has changed pretty dramatically. The art styles, the story styles, and there's also so much work being published that, Wayne, you as a comic store owner, you mentioned that you could still keep up with pretty much between you and Kent. You knew everything that you were selling. I don't know whether a comic bookstore owner could still do it today. Maybe you can, but as a fan, I can't keep up with everything that's out there. I don't know all the artists. I don't know all the writers. So I feel like now it's not that I discovered girls, but I discovered old age, and I'm not in a position where I can keep up with comic books the way that I have. I don't go to the conventions anymore, and there was a time when I was really 100% into it, and This is kind of the first time in my life that I haven't been, and there's a little bit of an identity crisis in there because I'm still kind of, I mean, comic books is such a huge part of my life, but I'm not quite of it as I have been for most of my life. But yeah, no, it's like I went through high school and college without skipping a beat, and I wasn't even really aware of how sort of, nerdy, which now is not a bad thing anyway, but back then, being a nerd wasn't considered that great, and I was sort of oblivious to that whole thing. I remember when I bought the ElfQuest books that you had at Time Warp, I loved them. I thought they were really amazing, but I was already, just I'm a senior in high school or junior in high school, and I'm a guy. It seemed weird to people that I was reading these books, and some friends of mine would come to visit at my house, and I remember this girl in particular would just make fun of me and
say, "Oh, what is that, Smurf Quest?"
Just like, no, it's ElfQuest. It's great. Just I was never, driven away from comic books by the fear of not impressing girls because I was just too oblivious about it anyway. So it did take me a while to eventually have a girlfriend. I definitely did not have a girlfriend in high school. Probably because I was reading Smurf Quest, So, still love ElfQuest. It's a great book. It's so I'm glad I didn't let the girl stop me.
Yeah.
All right. My name is Clayton Loper. I worked with Wayne and Time Warp for 7 or 8 years. I managed it for a brief period of time. It was a great moment in my life there. I've been shopping at Time Warp since I was 8 or 9 years old. I shopped at the one in Longmont for a very long time. Time Warp has been my second home for well over a decade now. And yeah, it's one of my favorite places. It's a home away from home. And yeah, it's been a great time. And Wayne has been an awesome person to work for, and not only an awesome boss, but an awesome person and a great friend and a mentor. So, yeah, it's been great times. It's been a time warp.
Compared to 1984, how many kids are buying comics on a regular basis who come in, like, say, have a file, hold slot, you get comics every week?
Not that many anymore. This is kind of a leading question, as you know the answer.
Well, I didn't actually know for sure. I wasn't actually sure.
Well, it's just because of the internet and video games and all that, that a lot of people, not just kids, but a lot of grown-ups read, on their Kindles or whatever. I don't believe in that, so I don't even know what the proper terminology is. But I cannot read a digital comic on a computer. I refuse. I'll go to my deathbed not reading. Once in a while, the publishers will send something that want us to look before we order it, and I'll skim it really fast. But I just can't read it. It seems unnatural to me. But that's not the way it is for the current generation of kids. Things have changed drastically, and they're continuing to change. So God only knows what it's going to be like in the next 10 years. Comic books might totally go away, just like newspapers are starting to go. Magazines.
I think there will always be. I mean, we're also just talking about the United States. Isn't manga still super big and huge in Japan?
Yeah.
Doesn't France still have a lot of bande dessinée fans?
Sure.
Because the medium's been more integrated for years with society there.
The United States definitely is moving away from print faster than the rest of the world, but still, this is where we are. I don't know. I mean, it seems like 10 years is probably a little bit too early to toll the bell for comics. I think that there's still going to be print comics. I know that people, at least my kids' age, in their early 20s, still enjoy holding a book and reading. It's obviously a lot less than it used to be because there are alternatives. I doubt they disappear altogether. It just, might take a little longer than, I don't know about 100 years from now, but 10 years from now, I hope that people will still be reading print stuff.
There's definitely a big difference, with the tactile experience, holding something, in your hands and turning the pages. I think a lot of people still really do enjoy that. Scorpio, you did mention manga. That's another thing that's changed a lot from 1984 to now. There were, some manga comics back in the day, a few here and there, and now it's just a lot of manga graphic novels are very, very popular. Still, there was a period where they weren't, and then the pandemic hit, and then they were again. So now it's really, really big. People are reading manga online too for a while there, and now they seem to be back to reading them, tactilely, if that's a word. So yeah, I'm not trying to predict the end of comic books. One thing comic books have going for them is the collectability aspect of them, where people do buy, sell, and trade them. And, that's not the same with newspapers or most magazines. So we definitely have, a different type of experience with comic books than regular print does.
Hi, I'm Joe Roman. It's my wife, Rita. We first met Wayne. I first met Wayne back in 1989 in the old store off Pearl Street. The first time I remember talking to Wayne was he and I talking about how much we both hated Chuck Rosansky. That was a nice long half-hour conversation, and I was hooked since then. I've been coming up here. We don't live close to here, and we would drive 2 hours to get here. Rita and Wayne made real good friends when Wayne was robbed recently. You want to take over that story?
Yeah, sure. No, we started coming here, about 2 or 3 years ago. Drove up here looking for some books our local shop didn't have, and just hit it off with Wayne right away. Just such a sweetheart. And because Boulder's not super close to where we live, and love the store because the store is really cool. But the moment you started talking to Wayne, you just fall in love with who he is, just the sweetest man. And I remember we specifically said we were not going to make friends with anyone that worked at the store. We were just going to come and just shop
a business relationship,
nice and comics. Casual. And the first time you have a conversation with Wayne, I'm like, well, I'm adopting him, and he's going to be my dad now, and because he's just such a sweetheart. And he, I remember the first time we actually had that conversation with, come have lunch with us. We want to hang out with you.
He's fake dad to many people.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Yeah.
And I said, we want to be friends with you. And he said, why? We're like, no, we're serious. He's so kind-hearted and so sweet. And then the store got robbed, and we started the GoFundMe for that. And he just couldn't get his mind wrapped around why we did that. And I said, because I just love you. I just fell in love with you. I adopted you, and I adore you. And he couldn't understand. And I said, everyone loves you.
And I've never had a cocaine dealer, but Wayne's a cocaine dealer. He is
That
totally
too.
every artist I like, every genre. He's like, you like Richard Corbin? I got you, Richard Corbin. You like Mobius? Guess what I just found?
Right.
Drugs are like that, too.
So.
Yeah, and for me, comics wasn't a habit until I met. But with Wayne, it was just, you just meet people sometimes that speak to your soul. And I told him once, I said, I don't care if you have a store, if you don't have a store, I just like you. And he said, really? I'm like, yeah, this could all go away. Now I have to prove it. And I'd still want to be your friend because I just think you're marvelous. And yeah, I still think so. And, there's just something about
Thanks,
him.
buddy.
Wayne, you've been a finalist for the Will Eisner Spirit of Comics Retailer Award 3 times. How are you nominated, and what is the criteria for being nominated?
Well, anybody can nominate an individual or a store. Basically, a customer can do it, a professional can do it, the retailers, just anybody can do it, actually. The first time I was nominated by Neil Gaiman for my very first one many, many years ago. And the second one, I was nominated by a gentleman named Ryan Clater of Elephant Press. And then I never found out who invited me or nominated me the third time. So, all 3 times that I was Well, I shouldn't say that. I think there were a couple other times I was nominated, but I didn't make the cut. So.
Hey, but 3 times.
3 times was pretty good. I can live with that.
3 times a lady.
What's that? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Let's see your finalist.
Oh yeah, they give us these little plaques. Hope you can see it there.
Yep, right there. That works.
I've got 3 of these, and they're all very cool. I can't find the other 2 yet. I just moved, but I did find one, and very proud of it for sure. The third year that I was a finalist, I was the only one on the North American continent. Everybody else was from different countries, Spain, and I can't remember what store won that particular year, but I remember the second year I was really positive I was going to win, or the store was going to win. And these guys from England ended up winning, and they sat there at the table and they went, "Oh, I knew it. I knew we were going to win." And I was like, because we were all at the same table. It just made me feel really bad. And as far as I know, I think I found out a couple of years ago that they closed their store. They're not even there anymore. Oh well.
You got staying power.
Yeah, 40 years here. So when you are nominated, you have to send in a whole bunch of paperwork and videos of your stores and testimonials, flyers from your signings and things like that. So I've got a huge box upstairs full of that stuff. I'm almost 100% sure it was the first year that I was a finalist. That's the year I actually got to meet Will Eisner too.
Oh, cool.
And I've got a couple of signatures of his on a couple of different things. And it was certainly a great honor because he was a fantastic human being and a great artist and a great creator.
Well, you also helped create the Best Adaptation from Another Medium Eisner Award, right?
That's true. Yeah, I was a retail judge for the 22nd Annual Eisner Awards. That was in 2010. And here's my name on the back. And we had finished all the voting and knew who would be winning everything. But I went home and I was a little frustrated when I flew back. And I was laying there in bed and I couldn't sleep. And I was just thinking there's got to be a way to get Darwin Cook an award because he didn't win anything that year for Richard Stark's Parker. He was nominated for Best Writer Artist, Best Graphic Album New, and didn't win for either. So anyway, I thought, well, let's create a new category that's for Best Adaptation from Another Work because that's what he did. So we came up, myself and Jackie Estrada, who's the facilitator of the Eisners, and we came up with Book of Genesis illustrated by Art Crum, Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species, Fahrenheit 451, West Coast Blues by Jacques Tardet, and then finally Richard Stark's Parker. And we all voted again, and then Richard Stark's Parker ended up winning the Eisner. And that was certainly very, very satisfying for sure. And they're still using this category today in the Eisner. So it felt really good to contribute something that's going to far outlast me for sure.
Right. It's a nice part of the legacy.
It is. It really is. It's very special to me for sure. It was an honor in the first place just to be an Eisner judge.
Right.
And, you can only do it once, so I'll never be able to do it again. But, it's one of the highlights of my retailing career for sure.
How do you get to be an Eisner judge?
You're just nominated by Jackie Estrada. And
that's it.
Yeah, that's all it takes. And she usually asks other judges at the end, do you have any recommendations who should be a judge? And somebody suggested me, and she called me, and I said, sure, I'll do it. It was a lot of work. You have to read so much. You know, the nominees on here are, there's 4 or 5, 6 in each one, but you have to read like 10 times that to get a, consensus of what was great that year, She has a lot of good suggestions. She had tables of books in this huge room. It was kind of staggering, to tell you the truth, but I'd read a lot of them before I got there, so that had a leg up on it.
Would you ever want to do it again if you could do it again?
I would do it again in a heartbeat if I could. Yes, sir.
Wayne always keeps up with his customers. He knows exactly what's coming out. He asks them questions, and stuff always shows up in my file that I was not expecting. He's pretty much kept me on track the last couple of years.
Are comics your favorite storytelling medium? Are they still your favorite? Were they always your favorite? Have they shifted over the years?
I still love comics. I don't read as many as I used to read. There's a lot of great shows on TV. I watch a lot of TV nowadays, so I only seem to have time to read comics at bedtime. I'm probably an addictive personality when it comes to being addicted to comic books and whatever else I'm addicted to. Women, maybe, I don't know.
Drugs are like that, too.
But there's so many great shows on TV that's been a distraction for me the last few years. That's another thing that's just, another distraction from people reading comics. There's so many great shows on TV. We have streaming services. I mean, when I was growing up, I almost had to read comic books because there were only 3 channels on TV. There was CBS, NBC, and ABC, and that was it. And so, there weren't a lot of great shows that I enjoyed, but nowadays, God, there's so much. I can't even watch everything I'd like to. So, comics will always be my first love for sure. And I can picture myself as a 90-year-old sitting on the porch in my rocking chair reading the new issue of Spider-Man. I'm distracted by life in general, just like everybody else. There's so many different things that distract us now. It's hard to give time to everything.
I started shopping at Time Warp sometime in 2010 when I moved to Boulder from Colorado Springs to go to CU, and did as much shopping here as one can do as a college student. Then, I finished up at CU in 2014, and, with an English degree, I figured out some other jobs to, just some weird stuff to get things moving. I was between those at one point, and I came in with a friend to pick up my books that week, and Wayne was checking me out at the counter, and he put up a Help Wanted sign on the little podium thingy there, and as he's checking me out, he's like raising his eyebrows at me and doing a little like pointing at it. I'm like, oh, okay. And so that day I go home and clean up my resume and all that. And the next day I run in and have it, and Wayne's like, oh, okay, great. And he picks it up, and we move over to the Silver Age section. And he sort of looks at the sheet of paper, looks at the back that's blank, and sort of looks back and goes, not a whole lot on there, huh? Well, when can you start? Is basically almost literally how that all went down. And then from there, I was here for the greater part of 7 years. I did a little bit of everything in that time, as one would expect. In that time, I learned a lot about me. I did a lot of growing up here, met a lot of people. I was always sort of like a homebody, a little bit of a, interior type of person, but, being here, I came out of my shell in a lot of ways and met so many people, and, I have Wayne and Time Warp to thank for that.
In general, what are Marvel and DC doing well now, and what are they not doing well now?
They're not doing it. They're not doing anything well. That's the problem.
Wow.
We're having so many problems with comics right now that the two big publishers are just kind of aimless. They just there's pockets of good things, but it started going downhill many years ago with Marvel doing so many different Spider-Man books and so many different Punisher books, and it just diluted everything. So it's still like that out there. Batman himself has more titles than most other companies' whole output. There's so many Batman books. It's just too much. And people, they've got to be kind of picky nowadays because nobody can afford all of them. And, I've always been more story-driven than art-driven. I mean, I appreciate both. It is sequential art, and it's, both of them are probably as important to each other as the other one is. But to me, you need a good story to start with. You need a good story with a beginning, a good middle, and a good end. And I don't think a lot of the big two's drive is meeting that right now. I just, like I said, there's pockets of good stuff, but the majority of stuff I read nowadays is not Marvel and DC, and that's what I grew up with, and that's what I loved, and they're leaving me behind because the stories just aren't as good. They're not as interesting to me as they used to be, and I don't know if that's their fault or my fault for getting old. I'm not really sure, but they're not really communicating with the retailers, and there's not letter columns that they're getting input from the people who are reading things anymore. And it's just it's a strange time for them because they're so big and corporate that they've forgotten their roots and forgotten where they came from. And it's different. It's just the other companies, Dark Horse and Boom and Image, are experimenting with different things and having more hits than the big two are right now.
How much do you think writing stories for the trades has affected positively or negatively the Marvel DC output?
Well, that's, again, stories with a beginning, middle, and an end. So they have a story in their mind and they want to write it and then be done with it and move on to the next story. So I'm not sure, you could probably answer that question better than I can, really. I know that there's something there, and I don't think it's good.
Well, I want your opinion. I mean, I've got my own opinion, but as a retailer, I'm curious how you see it.
I don't have any influence on it. I can't control it, so I just have accepted it. That's the way it is, and there's nothing I can really do about it because that's the formula nowadays, Because
it seems like the price goes up, and the page count goes down, and the panel count has gone down. Page count is really kind of arbitrary. It doesn't matter. But if you can have a set amount of panels in a comic, and when the panel count goes down, you're even losing story that way as well. In general, it's gone down significantly. And I don't know where I'm going with that other than that. I wish there were more panels.
You don't like the double page spread?
I think double page spread has its place, but just to see the Justice League jumping at you is a waste of space.
Talking about the stories that are written for trades, right now, to me, considering, again, the rising prices and the sort of decompressed storytelling that's more popular, I think I've stopped buying monthly comic books, the 32-page books, it's been years, and occasionally I might buy an issue because it's just like there's a cover that I really like, and or there has to be a special reason for me to buy a comic book. So I guess my first question would be: are the monthlies a necessary part of your business? Like, would you be able to run the store more as a bookstore without the monthly comic books, or not?
That's a good question, actually. I still sell, a lot of people call them floppies or monthlies, but the industry is certainly changing to the graphic novel or trade paperback format more and more all the time. And that's what a lot of people want. They want the whole story. They don't want to come in there and wait a whole month for the next part. So that has changed dramatically, even in the last 10 years. I would say I sell a lot more graphic novels now than I did then, and it's continuing exponentially all the time. However, it's tough for me to justify in my budget every month buying a $16.99 or $19.99 book that's not proven, and it might not be something that people are going to pick up for that much without knowing some of the history of the book in a monthly form. And so I don't think it'll ever switch completely to a graphic novel trade paperback form, because for me, especially as a retailer, I need to say a sale on a book and have the sales be decent. If it goes to a trade paperback first and I don't have that sales history, I'm probably not going to order it, just because I don't know if I can take a chance on a $20 book and then it turns out to be a dud. If somebody reads something and likes it, if I'm selling one copy of a monthly book, and we talk about this all the time when we're doing the orders, if I'm only selling one copy or two copies a month, that's not going to lend itself to selling a trade paperback. If people didn't care about the monthly book, they're not going to care about the trade paperback, for instance. So there are exceptions to the rule. Brubaker and Sean Phillips with their Reckless books and things like that. People realize, the first one was good and came out as a graphic novel. The second one was good, so I'll just keep getting those. So there are exceptions for sure.
And that works for them but they have built a very particular creative team, and they've built an audience. So it's almost as if it was a periodical. It's like there's a new Brubaker, Sean Phillips product. People know what it is. We're going to be looking for it. That's interesting. Right. That's a great new model, if you will, where it's almost like in books. You've got a new novel by, I don't care, Le Carre or somebody, and people are like, okay, I like this stuff. I'm going to buy it. That makes sense. That's kind of interesting. And they work fast enough that they can do that too. I mean, Sean's great, just one of those rare artists that can put out really interesting art without taking, years. So it's good.
I am Matt Marquardt. I am a regular here at the stores, and I like the travel books. I've been coming here since he was over at his Pro location when I was in high school and junior high school. He's been such a good friend of mine and stuff that even went to my 50th birthday party in January.
Certainly, all three of us have actualized our lives in conjunction with your store. You've been a great manager and a great owner of a great store that has actually translated people's ideas into things that become concrete. We've had lives that were, just strongly influenced by the space that you created. So,
well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that because of great employees like Scorpio, it's helped me survive all these years. I don't do it by myself. You have to have a good staff, and I've been blessed with a lot of great employees over the years that have gone on to become great friends also. So, it really does take a village. It's not just one person.
Hey, my name's Kyle. I work here at Time Warp Comics. Store is very important to me. It's the big reason why I am into comics is the owner, Wayne Winsett. He helped guide me through the process when I wanted to get into it, and it's a lifelong hobby I never knew I was missing, and the store means quite a bit to me.
He's a Boulder icon, as the Daily Camera would say. 40 years, it's big. It's been in the game as long as, the direct market has existed, whether it was his own store or otherwise. He's the man.
So when I was shopping here as a customer, every 2 weeks I would go up to Wayne at the back table and ask if they were hiring yet. Eventually I came in one day and there was just a help wanted sign on the door, so that's kind of how I started working here. And then 2 months after that, I worked my first, last, and only Fan Expo, which also happened to be Time Warp's last time going there as vendors. The whole weekend was really busy. It was a lot of fun, and after 3 days of working it, we came back here after having dinner, and Wayne pulled in with the moving truck that we had with all of the stuff from the show in it, and backed the moving truck directly into my car, at which I just started laughing hysterically. I thought it was so funny. Then he parked it and got out of the van, and everybody is kind of looking at him and me horrified, kind of trying to gauge both of our reactions to the situation, and Wayne just completely ignored it. He just acted like he didn't hit my car. So then I asked him if he had noticed that he had backed the moving truck into me, and he said, "Oh, that's what that was."
Here we are 40 years tomorrow. We made it, and I appreciate everybody that's come here because everybody has helped, especially all my former employees who are here today, current employees, of course. Without all these guys' help over the years, I definitely would not be here because I've had great crews for the last 40 years, and I'm very, very grateful for all their help. Kent here was my very first employee. Certainly grateful to him.
It's just a good time. Just a good time. It's just a good time. Just a good time.
Temple of Comics.
It's just a good time. Just a good time.
Temple of Comics.
That was my tribe.
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 Temple of Comics. Temple of Comics. He is the High Priest of Comics, and Time Warp is the temple.
Face out.
Oh no!
Such good friend of mine.
Thank you, Wayne.
I love you all.
All right. Well, that's a good place to wrap it up, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you for sitting here for a couple hours, Wayne.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me.
And thank you for 40 years of Time Warp.
40 years is just an amazing accomplishment for the man. I mean, it's the best store in Colorado. End of story, period.
Shaddoom.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. We're gonna do a couple of little speeches, and if somebody wants to record or take pictures, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
But yeah.
It's a great honor to have. I started this store in 1984. Wow. I bought it from Mile High Comics down in Denver, and this is our 4th location. In case you don't know that, we've been here for about 15 years in this location. We really like it, but might have to move for a bigger, cheaper place. So that is something that Kelly and Dottie are looking at. So, basically I invited all my friends, and most of you guys are here, and I really appreciate all you guys coming. A couple of my employees are here, Griffin and Cole, and certainly appreciate them. They work really hard here, and couldn't do this without them. And all my former employees, there's quite a few of you here. We got John Murphy and Barry and Scorpio. A lot of guys that have helped out here over the years that couldn't do it without you guys. It's not just me doing this. It's as Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village, and it was always a lot of support from family, friends, employees. A lot of great employees over the years that really kept this place afloat. So, thanks to all you guys. I've had a really blessed life doing this, doing something I really, really love for 40 years. It's been a blessing, really. How many people turn their lifelong hobby into a vocation that lasts for even 20, 25 years, much less 40. So it's a great, great honor to be able to turn it over to these two wonderful people. I mean, there was an article we had in the paper, of course, a lot of people saw that I was talking about, hanging up the cape and cowl, and you guys saw that article, and they were in here the very next morning saying, yeah, we're interested in that. And that was only a couple months ago, and now it's done that fast. Incredible. What an amazing thing. So I'm very, very grateful for meeting you guys. This store is going to be in great hands. They're going to take it to new and better heights, I guarantee you. They're going to do a lot of wonderful things here. So hopefully everybody that's here will keep supporting the entity Time Warp and these wonderful people. The cooks are just fantastic. So please support them, and please keep coming in and loving comics, because that's what I do. Is I love comics. I love what I've been doing, and I'm very, very grateful for everybody that's helped out over these years. So that's all I got. Anybody else, I apologize.
All right, my turn? Okay. So 33 years ago, I walked into a comic book shop on Arapahoe, or on Pearl, back over. Me and my buddy Ty walked in, and we wandered around going, wow, this is kind of cool. And at the time, I really wasn't into comic books as far as the traditional sort of, DC, Marvel sort of stuff. It wasn't my deal. But then I walked past a box that had the Robotech Macross thing on it. I'm like, oh, that's my jam. And so I cleaned him out of every single back issue that's in the box, and that was the very first comic that I ever bought, ever, and it was from Wayne at Time Warp. And every comic that I've bought since then has been from Wayne at Time Warp. I very much have a personal connection to this shop because of the amazing community that exists here. And I can't tell you how many times that I've been working, up front or just talking to you, find people, and I hear stories of like, oh yeah, I started, collecting at Wayne's shop when I was, a teenager. I've been coming here for 25 years. I've been coming here for 40 years. It happens all the time. It's not just what happens, right? And that, I think, is a testament to Wayne's ability to create a fantastic community. And that's something that we really want to focus on and make sure that we continue. It's very important to us to continue to have the soul of Time Warp, be here in Boulder and continue to be an icon of this city. And my whole life, I've always wanted to be as cool as Wayne. I always wanted to be that comic book guy that had a shop and could talk to people about all of the fun geek things that I love. And for the longest time, I never imagined that it would happen. I corporate drone working in, corporate America for years. And, we decided that this just needs to happen because this space is an important space to be maintained. We need to have a good, healthy, safe space for everybody to come and be who they are, watch what they want to watch, read what they want to read, and be who they are. And that's important that we're going to continue on that. So I really appreciate all of you for coming in. Thank you so much. And we really look forward to seeing all of you in the future. And hopefully, we can, continue Wayne's, Wayne's, legacy on. And so, without further ado,
the passing of the torch. This is not the Human Torch, in case anyone. If you know comic books, you know what I'm talking about.
I hope they should.
I hope I'm not going to set him on fire when I hand it to him.
That would be no fun.
This is the official handing of the torch from the old owner, me, to the new owners, and I say two because they're both equals. That's for darn sure.
I just don't do that whole public speaking thing. Leave that to him.
I don't either. Why did you make me do this? No, I was fine. I don't think anybody judged me for stuttering and stammering. Mr. Cook, Mrs. Cook. The torch.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for everything.
Look at you.
I told you.
It is amazing. We're gonna have a little
it's like toast.
The toast here and
make sure you got beverages if you got them.
Yeah.
The toast.
Not too much.
No, just a little.
Here's some.
This one's from my first wedding in 1989. I still have it. It's a classic. To your mom. Kyle's mom. My first.
All right,
guys.
So, to long life, happiness, and lots more comic books.
Yeah.
If you know want to sing along, that would be great. You'll kind of figure it out once it goes. It's astounding, time is fleeting, madness takes control, but getting close to me, not very much longer. I've got to lose control. I remember the time was drinking the moment. Blackness would hit me when boys calling my name. Let's do the time warp again. Louder! Let's do the time warp again. It's a jump to the left. It's a step to the right. We can